start the introduction of my panelists first, and then we'll go to you. So far I have Junaid. Junaid is our technology guru. He knows more IT and what is happening in IT and health more than all of us. And I have reverted back to him for his consultation. Okay, what do I do now in this case? So Junaid, just wave your hand. And then Junaid is a neurologist, but doing a lot of healthcare technology work. And Danish, who is in Orlando now, and he's happier than he was in Nebraska, I can tell. And Danish is our Apna Merit Chair for this year and last year, and hopefully many more years. And he, for audience, most of the people know him, but really since Danish joined the team and started helping and then leading us, we have really made progress, which we haven't done in like many years. So he's intelligent, smart, organized, and usually polite, usually don't get angry, which is good. And then I think Shahid Bhai is not here. I already introduced Uzair to you. Uzair is our like Google of Pakistani entrepreneurs anywhere in the world. So we can just call him rather than asking Siri or Google, and he will connect us. So a lot of these people who come to this webinar initially, actually, he gave us all those collaborations. With that, let's start with the formal program. I'm Babar Rao. I'm a dermatologist in New York area. I also teach at Rutgers and Cornell in the city, and have other healthcare related interests. And then the program today, like all the program, is sponsored by APNA. It's totally for education and knowledge of APNA members and anybody else who joins. And just to keep in mind that we do invite like various thought leaders, organizations, and they give their opinions, but we are not endorsing their ideas or their organizations. It's just for sharing knowledge for people in Pakistan to see what's happening here, and people here, especially APNA membership, what we can do together in Pakistan or here. So with that, I'm going to go to introduction of our guest and speaker today, Naweed Muhammad. Naweed is currently he's a president and CEO of this tech Inceptions. The company basically is a technology-based geriatric care. I was just talking to him. He said, there are not very organized systems like that. Systems are broken, and he basically is connecting it with technology, how to take care of that. Also, he is a graduate of Punjab University. Most of us are, or many of us are, from pharmacy. Actually, pharmacy school was connected to Government College Lahore, and we'll cheat through there because you can pass through English department, which was only co-ed program there. So Naweed also then did after pharmacy in Punjab University, then he did his degree from also in Sacramento from California University, and has actually developed many products. He's been our R&D for many companies, and he's in Silicon Valley, and basically will share with us how he has gotten to this point and where he's trying to go, and how we can, if at all, help and collaborate. So Naweed, please get started. If I miss anything, reintroduce yourself, please.
That's more than enough. Okay, let me share the screen.
Yes, you can just take it, I think. Yeah.
Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some of the thoughts with everyone, and I really appreciate. And I would like to spend a few seconds on this title slide just to set the scope right, that what this topic is about and what this topic is not about. Since it's about pharmaceutical research, pharmaceutical industry, I want to make it clear that it has nothing to do with the pharmaceutical manufacturing, the number of drugs being sold and what their sale volume is. It has nothing to do. It is exclusively focused on the clinical, on the drug research part of the activity. Within the drug research, there are two generally broadly divided areas. There is a non-clinical research and development, which of course takes place first. And once it is successful, it transitions to clinical research. And this discussion is mainly focused, for a reason which I will explain later, is mainly focused on the non-clinical research and development. Clinical research and development is not part of this talk for the most part. The reason I call it that this is an opportunity for Pakistan of epic proportions, think of this activity as a stem cell. If we can do it right in Pakistan, it can really lead to a lot of other opportunities within pharmaceutical research and development. The organization of the presentation is like this. First, we will talk about the vision. What is the motivation behind it for sharing all this? Then what is the opportunity and what is the nature and how big that opportunity is? Then we'll talk about that if we are to pursue somebody from here or some other people you may communicate to, that what would be the first step for Pakistan to step into this era of drug research. And finally, in broad strokes, I have put together a business plan just to give a comprehensive understanding of all that we are here talking about today. The vision. This is a very important slide. It is a seed for a sector. What is started as a first step in this pharmaceutical R&D research, it can really lead to a huge sector, multi-billion-dollar sector in Pakistan. And Pakistan is very well oriented to be able to step into that era. Unfortunately, we have not yet been interested, or we have not yet been actively pursuing this, but this can really be a big opportunity. The objective, final objective should be, as a nation, to pioneer pharmaceutical contract research and development in Pakistan, which will eventually lead to establishment of a world-class drug discovery and development sector. It is very much possible, but we have to take the first step. And we will talk about mainly about the first step today. And I truly believe that the necessity to get into this type of research, in this type of activity, is a matter of national security. We severely lack this technical know-how. We severely lack any activity of that kind, and also we are not able to produce much of the pharmaceutical API, the active ingredient, inactive ingredient, and our pharmaceutical industry is highly dependent on exports. If COVID has taught us anything, the one thing we can be very certain is that national security comes into play when there are scarcity of resources. You have to be able to do it for yourself. No one will give you drugs, no one will give you vaccine and all that. Now, another important aspect of this is that, as I said, that I'm going to eventually present this as a business model. It is very important to start and then facilitate other interested parties who are going to be your direct competitor. It is not a matter where you have business secrets keeping to yourself and you do not promote others to come into this. Think of this opportunity as a phenomenon seen. I am more familiar with Lahore, the Shala market. Hall Road, the Beedon Road, and also Brandreth Road, where you move just 2 feet and you have a next provider of the similar services. But everybody flocks there because they know that whatever they are looking for, it will be available. So establish one organization, and that organization's objective should be to facilitate their competitors come into their neighborhood so that an ecosystem is developed. And once that happens, then there are service expansions, service extensions, and I will elaborate on these in just a moment. What is the opportunity? In 2020, the total revenue of pharmaceutical industry was $1.27 trillion. That number is not relevant other than that $91 billion was spent on drug research. This is the pool in where Pakistan can dip into if we start some of the activities, research and development activities in Pakistan. That's a huge number, big number, and Pakistan can really dip into this for a significant portion in a relatively short period of time. And I'm saying this on my personal experience because when I was in drug research here in Silicon Valley, we were outsourcing, and I have seen Indian companies. I worked with all companies all around the world, in Europe, in Asia, China, and Australia, and other parts. And in India, there was a relatively short period of time within which I have seen one particular company, one example, that they grew from 25 to 26 chemists to 600 plus chemists. That's a huge growth. Now, pharmaceutical industry is among the top industries which invests back their revenue into. This is a busy slide. All you have to do is just pay attention to that. What percentage of their revenue is spent back into R&D? It's huge. If you look at the absolute numbers, this is in billions. That's the number I was referring to as being $91 billion. So that is a very significant business opportunity. Now, why companies outsource? There are several reasons. Resource management. If companies have their full-time employees, particularly here in US, it is very costly. Whether there is an ongoing project or no ongoing project, they have to continue to burn certain money on ongoing basis. So sometimes there is a need for more capacity. And for that reason, to avoid any peaks or troughs, they outsource. And the outsourcing model is such that whenever there is more need, you can provide more people to do that research work. And whenever there is less need, you can take the people off of the project. Lack of research facilities. There are a lot of virtual companies working here in the Bay Area. Gone are the days when pharmaceutical companies used to operate under the doctrine that if we are a pharmaceutical company, we have to have every single skill set in-house. Gone are those days. Now I have seen companies which are completely virtual, and including the company I worked with, the company where I worked, and we developed patch for post-herpetic neuralgia, which is now approved in Europe, US, Canada, and elsewhere in the country, Japan. We did not have a single lab. We did not have the ability to dissolve sodium chloride in water and tell the solubility of that. There was nothing. What we did, we outsourced every single activity, starting from the non-clinical all the way to clinical. Everything was outsourced. So the companies that model has changed. So what it means is that $91 billion is not being spent in the countries where the pharmaceutical companies are conducting research and development as being the owner of that research. That amount is being spent wherever there's a skill set available to do the job. And also, the cost of conducting that research in European countries, in America, North America, is significantly higher than when it is outsourced to parts of the world like China, India, and Pakistan, for that matter, falls in that category too. Where the current outsourcing trends are, what are the current outsourcing trends? Obviously, China and India, they are the major centers of interest. Lots of people, after having a significant experience here in US, have gone back and they have established companies which are conducting different types of research, and they are attracting a lot of business. India offers one advantage over China because of the language, English language being the main communication tool there, which in China, there are some problems. Pakistan has the similar advantage. Pharma sector in India is growing by leaps and bounds for at least a decade and a half. Why Pakistan has the potential? First of all, we have the talent pool. We have a talent pool on the chemical sciences, on the biological sciences side, as well as on the clinical sciences side. This talent is not ready to perform. It would need a lot of training, but that can be done. But once that talent is put into this type of projects, it will really be the source of new potential talent being transformed into something which is readily sellable. Means that that talent, without leaving the country, can earn a living which is going to be significantly higher than any other possible opportunity for them over there. For example, a chemist, whether they have master's degree or even PhD for that matter, in Pakistan, does not earn a lot of money. A chemist hired for a clinical, for a medicinal chemistry research is generally paid $8,000 to $6,000 from here, which is a minuscule money compared to what a chemist over here would cost. Chemist over here in Silicon Valley cost about $300,000 to $400,000 a year. But over there, the similar type of work can be done by spending less than 100K, which is a significant saving for the company. Plus, we have a patient pool, and we have developed and developing world diseases. That is another advantage we have. Also, we have a big pool of treatment naive patients, those who understand the clinical research part of the operation. They would appreciate that what these three aspects mean for clinical research, to have developed and developing world diseases, and also to have treatment naive patients in their patient pool. Plus, our English is our official language, and we have a world-class in IT infrastructure. All those things really are can serve as a backbone for this type of program. Now, there are some potential concerns, and there are some things we have to ponder upon. Intellectual property laws, we have to make sure that intellectual property is protected when companies give us research projects. We have to project a sense of political stability so that companies do not hesitate to give you the projects. Obviously, this has been a challenge historically for us, but nonetheless, this is something we have to address. Negative portrayal by work media, that is another challenge we have. Import and export policies for the chemicals, for the supplies, for the instruments. These are the things which Pakistan has to look into, that how can they facilitate. Chemicals should move in and out at a very high speed. Similarly, the supplies for the instruments and the instruments themselves, there should not be any barrier which would considerably delay in and out. That's very critical. I have been recently talking to someone who offered some of the help they can provide to really facilitate much of the problems listed in this slide, obviously with the exception of political stability. Then shipping, as I alluded to earlier, that is really critical, because the speed at which things should move in and out, the speed at which the communication and exchange of articles should take place is really, really critical. We have the infrastructure. If we put some thought behind it and if we optimize our policies, this can be done. There is no showstopper. Obviously, the government support is going to be crucial, but it is not going to be required to the extent that this activity cannot be started. Now, what are the possible services Pakistan can offer in the pharmaceutical research and development? Medicinal chemistry. Medicinal chemistry is the first step. It is the mother of the entire drug development process. That's where drug molecules are designed and synthesized. Everything starts from there. And that involves different types of activities. Lead generation. Lead is a molecule which has the potential to go into clinical studies. Then there is a lead optimization. Companies may have leads generated here in the US or wherever else they may be working on it. And that lead needs to be optimized, make some chemical changes to increase its potency or to decrease its undesirable effects, whether those are clinical, whether those are pharmaceutical effects, properties. Intermediate synthesis. When the drug molecule is synthesized, it generally comprises of several step synthesis. Molecule A converted to B to C to D and so on and so forth. And then eventually you get your desired molecule M. All those steps present a project, and that project can be generally given out to smaller companies outside the country, and that is a very, very intense activity around the globe. Then metabolite synthesis, small scale up, all these activities can be, if there is any question about these terminologies, I will address that at the end. Then there is a process chemistry. Medicinal chemistry is where you design a drug molecule and you synthesize it. You do not care about the cost at which that synthesis takes place. You do not care about the efficiency of a synthesis, and none of those factors are taken into account. But when you have to prepare that same molecule after it becomes a moiety of interest, whether that's for the clinical studies or for the commercialization, then it shifts from the medicinal chemistry to process chemistry. Process chemistry requires different types of considerations when the molecule is being synthesized, that it has to be efficient in terms of its cost, and it has to be of a certain purity and all those things. So that is another opportunity which can emerge from medicinal chemistry to process chemistry. It can be an add-on service. Formulation services is another area where Pakistan can play a role and can attract some business there. Formulation development, it can be optimization, simply stability studies, or even small clinical supplies that can be done. That is another area. Yet another area is analytical research and development, to analyze on the chemistry, pre-formulation, formulation, and stability studies, bioanalytical, all that analytical, which involves purification sciences, HPLC, NMR, mass spec, and all those kind of things. That is another area where Pakistan can offer services. Then on the biology side, it can set up small labs to conduct something very specific. Doesn't have to do everything. I have seen the companies hand out projects in a piecemeal fashion, very small activity that is given to this research organization. Another one is given to another one. So it can be done. So absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion, and toxicology studies, these can be initiated in Pakistan. There is a wide range of opportunities we can tap into. The question is there infrastructure present? My belief is that there is sufficient infrastructure and skill set present, but it needs to be trained and refined. And we have enough resources here in the US alone that if someone takes initiative and starts this activity, we can provide a lot of support to get to the point where the skill set has the sophistication required to conduct the job. Then clinical research, of course, is again a big opportunity in itself. Obviously, we have to address the regulatory, we have to see the regulatory and ethical landscape, how it is, but it presents as a big opportunity. I'm sure that most attendees understand that very well. Now, what is the first step if we have to move in that direction? The first way to start, chemistry, setting up a chemistry lab is the safest first step we can take. It does not require a lot of competencies. It does not require, this is another important thing I want to point out, why the chemistry is the best first step to start. When companies give projects out to different contract research organizations, the confidence in their work is very critical. They have to be certain that whatever data is being reported as a result of those research activities is reliable. They can depend on it. Chemistry largely is free of that risk. It is something you do, and the other side, without digging very deeply into the process, they can ascertain, they can establish that what is indeed in this vial is in fact what we have asked for. So it can be the first step for a variety of reasons, confidence building, and also for less regulatory requirement. Workforce training is relatively easy. We have a sufficient number of organic chemists already trained in Pakistan. We would just have to train them how to think like a medicinal chemist. One of the things that is done in the medicinal chemistry step is the structure-activity relationship. That's a little sophisticated area, but that can be done later on. But as long as we have good chemists, we have the benchtop surface to conduct chemical reactions, that can become a big source of revenue for the country and for the obviously for the company and the people working on the benches. And these skills are transferable from project to project. That's another beauty of starting from the chemistry. If the chemist is assigned to a project for a drug molecule being developed for, let's say, blood pressure, and chemistry changes completely to another type of molecule, that skill set is transferable. That is not so much the case in case of biological projects. Skill sets are generally not fully portable from one project to another. Now, if we can have access to controlled substances like morphine and other opioids, there is a big need for many research projects which involve those substances. I'm not sure what the current status is, but sometime back, there was a big problem that India would not allow any lab to work on controlled substances. And that can be an advantage for Pakistan if the Pakistan's policies do not hinder that access to an extent that it simply cannot be subjected to even research activities. Now, what's the growth potential? We can build customer service, and the customer in this case is going to be the pharmaceutical companies in chemistry, and then we can add more services, biological services, different types of chemistry services, and then we can spin off some of the related services to other companies, to other entities. And this can really be so easy that if you have a working relationship with one pharmaceutical company, the research and development project owner, then they move from one stage of the project to the next one. They generally try to engage the same vendor if the same vendor can present different services related. And that is a potential for growth. Without finding new customers, there is a big chance for continuing with the same customer. When it comes to chemistry projects, it is done from the business point of view in three different fashions. The first one is fee for service. It's a fixed cost for the project. They say they will pay you $560,000 and you produce for us so many grams of these two molecules. That's it. You can take your time and do that as whatever works for you, and that is negotiated upfront, and that's how it is done. Another is FTE based, full-time employee fee based. This is where I experienced in case of that Indian company. They started with 26 chemists. Each chemist was being paid $6,000. I was paying $6,000. I hired few chemists there, and total the strength was 26. Within 18 months, they had more than 600 chemists. Now you multiply 600 chemists with $6,000 a month. You do the math, and that is just one company. And that company had not reached by any means any degree of saturation. It was just a growth started in that case. And the similar potential is here for Pakistan. Another setting is where risk sharing. The companies pay a small upfront fee, and then based on the success of the project, some royalties are paid. And eventually when project becomes successful and reaches its ultimate milestone, then the reward is shared and risk is shared. Now, if one is interested in taking the first step, what is it that needs to be done? Set up a medicinal chemistry lab. I will show some of the examples there. Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad, to my understanding, are the best places where that can be done, because it has to be in a metropolitan area. It's an important factor for foreign visitors so that they do not have to travel from the airport X number of hours to any other place. And it's also important that it is in the near vicinity of a university, so that university has access to your talent pool and you have access to university resources and talent pool. So there is a resource sharing possible. And also at the same time, of course, access and training for the talent pool. Service support industry is very important. For example, if you have a nuclear magnetic resonance, or you have a mass spectrometer, or you have a UV spectrometer, the companies providing those instruments would have to have a service port available, and that service port is going to be only available in these big cities, Lahore, Karachi, Islamabad. Some of the capital instruments required for this include nuclear magnetic resonance, and for a mass spec and UV, HPLC. And then there are small instruments required for full-time employees. We can go into details if someone is interested in this. In terms of personnel, the management has to be have to have a US or European experience, and combined with management from Pakistan with experience, the local experience of managing the workforce. On the scientific level, the team would comprise of PhDs, one PhD managing X number of masters degree holders, and similarly each master degree holder managing X number of BS chemistry level chemists. And then of course the support staff to do some of the related and ancillary work. It requires not a huge space to start. It can be managed in a relatively smaller rented space, and things can start there. This is one of the glimpses of a medicinal chemistry lab. Here's another setup. Here's yet another setup. One more, and this is nuclear magnetic resonance. These instruments are needed to analyze the molecule after synthesis, that to establish that the molecule in the vial is indeed what I intended to synthesize. That's another instrument, some more instruments. This is how it looks like. This is a good way generally chemists work. So in summary, start with the medicinal chemistry service, then expand to process chemistry. Then one can start in vitro studies. And from there on, a lot of opportunities will ensue. Thank you.
Thank you, Naweed. That was excellent. I'm sure there are people in the audience who will have many questions.
Yes.
But before that, let me just go straight to Umar Hayat, who is one of our lead in pharma industry, who has a lot of experience like you. Umar, do you want to introduce, and do you have any questions?
So I think Naweed and we know each other since.
Okay, so all right.
So we understand this sector very well, and thank you very much, Naweed. I mean, as I said, you are always diamond, and we are glad to have you on this podium. Wonderful presentation, very impressive. I think the opportunities are unlimited, as you mentioned. And I really like the way you presented, like the knowledge created in one place can be transformed, especially for the chemistry. And also the other point, never be afraid of the competition. What we are trying to do is not the one opportunity for one company. I think what we are dreaming about is really kind of the ecosystem. So no, I don't have any question, but I will let the other guys to ask the questions. Thank you.
All right. Anybody from the panelists, Junaid or Danish or anybody else from the panels have a question?
Mr. Muhammad, this was like extremely useful, and especially the way you presented the vision. It was always confusing for us who are not involved in pharmacy and use it all the time to understand the breadth of it and understand the opportunity. And I agree with you that significantly, that given our potential in Pakistan, especially within the last 3 years, the availability of courses, YouTube videos, the potential for tech has been significant. Overall, the price ratio, I mean, the declining pricing in general for even large components that used to be out of reach, changing technology has made it easier for us to be able to start these in Pakistan. So again, very grateful for an amazing presentation. The one thing that I still was wondering, that why is political issues still such a problem? I mean, India is not really that good. I mean, there are clearly some political issues going over there, but why were we not able to create, with such a amazing breadth of people and potential, a strength that we can project, even if there's political upheaval, that, businesses do work, right? I mean, everyone's eating, drinking, so why not?
Yes, sure. Well, in Silicon Valley, that's where I have experience, and that's where most of the US pharmaceutical research and development industry is concentrated. By the way, almost 70% of new drug molecules come from small companies. And the majority of that is here in Silicon Valley. And it is said here that deadline in Silicon Valley is yesterday. That's the mindset.
Yeah.
So no one can afford any delay at all. So when I used to give projects to whatever part of the world, I would look at a few things. Number one, what is the financial stability of that company, for how long they are going to be in business? Because I didn't want to start a business with a company, give them a project who's going to be belly high 6 weeks from now. If there is any political or any other instability, that can hinder our project. And these projects are not, first of all, in majority of the cases, quickly portable at all. And in some cases, these are not portable at all. And there's a chain of sequence, there's a sequence of events lined up that you will give me this by this date, and you will, it's like, baton being passed down. So that is a big risk. And the companies take into account every single factor. And the political instability is taken into account. That if the country is shut down for whatever reason, if they change their policy or whatever happens, then we are screwed. And the companies, that's why, are sensitive to that. That's one of the many factors.
Danish, any comments?
I have a few questions, but I see Uzair had raised his hand. I'll let him go first.
Go ahead, Uzair.
Thank you, Danish. So, Naweed, I think this is one of the best presentation, very succinct, very interesting, and thought-provoking. So, congratulations. I think this is one of the best I have so far attended. Very pinpointed. I have just a comment and a question. So, you're familiar, being a chemist, that some of the best institute in Pakistan, they are dying for any such partnership. Like the case in point is the HEJ Institute in Karachi. So I think they are there. They are producing so much large number of PhDs and organic chemistry. I think this is one of the best center. They do have all this equipment. And I met most of the people, who were leading that, starting from Ataur Rahman to Iqbal Chaudhry and everything. So all the time, they are dying for any such project. So I really fail to understand the missing link between the platform, who can transfer this thing. And now there is a chain of such universities who are very rich in life sciences. And they have all these instruments which you have shown over there, and the commercial industry as well. So I think this is just like clicking together. So from my perspective, I think just what they need is, we have here Umar Hayat, who has been traveling so often to Pakistan most of the time, meeting all of those people, the regulator and, the industry and the academia. So I think if the missing link is this one, that we need to have an intermediary company, the platform company, which can bridge up the researcher with the commercial partner over here. So that is the missing link. I think you are in the best position to comment on this, please.
You're absolutely right. All required ingredients are there. We just have to pick those ingredients in the right sequence, in the right quantity proportion, and mix them together. And that's the only missing component. I do not understand that why thus far we have not pursued this opportunity. One of the talent over there, the raw talent is there, but we have to train them. One of the problem I have observed, not just now, decades ago when I was there, we have a problem. We have the instruments, you alluded to that point, but with the instruments we have, we are suffering with one syndrome: do not mess up syndrome. You have a very expensive instrument in the lab, but nobody is willing to touch that just with the fear of, if something goes wrong. And I can give you a lot of examples I have a direct knowledge of and some indirect knowledge of, that the universities bought the instrument, was never used, and no one got it trained on that. So there is again, everything is there. It just needs one step to be taken, which does not require a huge investment. It just needs the willingness to take that first step. And we would really be working on the progenitor of a huge opportunity once we step into that in that direction.
I will probably touch it, Naweed, while you were talking. I was thinking how to break the ice. I think the one option would be for institutes like HEJ. They take the project and they charge only when the project is delivered. Because you're absolutely right. I mean, how I can take the risk to outsource anything to anybody, which I don't have the confidence in. So the one way to break would be HEJ, and I can do, by the way, one. I can probably convince the company saying, look, we're going to sign an agreement with these guys. We're going to give them the deduction scheme, and we will pay them only if they deliver. If that kind of risk the companies or the HEJ is willing to take, I think I can break that ice.
Yes, Umar, they are willing. Yeah, so that willingness is there. And they have shared, now we have good life sciences universities even up in the north, like Qaid-e-Azam University, like many new startup universities, and they are more than willing to take this risk. So what is required is that the people, who are visiting from US, they are busy unless and until it's a right commercial proposition and there is a commitment, things can start moving. And you know that. Even from the industry purposes. So in the sideline, I can always discuss with Naweed, and I feel this is quite easy and straightforward, not much difficulty, because I know in detail about the life sciences infrastructure back in Pakistan, very correct. I know what instruments are there and what is their, are they working or not, and the faculty, everything is available. All the data is available. We need to just collect the data.
As I said, Uzair is our Google of collaborations and connections, so we should utilize that. But Danish, please go ahead. There is a question from the audience we can address later. Danish, go ahead, please.
I have a little comment. I would not even call it a risk. I would call it a cost of doing business. Just to have the right mindset about this, the undertaking the project and not asking for upfront payment. Because that's going to be a valuable experience, the ability to interact with the research and development company like Pfizer or Merck, for that matter, it's just going to be huge. Please, Danish bhai.
Danish, say something wise. You're Danish.
So I think I don't want to destroy the positive note too much, but I think it's important for us to start by recognizing that the things are pretty bad in Pakistan, and we need to first highlight and admit. In therapy, they say, okay, you first have to accept, that you have something wrong and things are not going well, and before you actually can turn around things. So if we all praises and all saying, oh, everything's already there, then everybody's like, okay, then why nothing happens if everything is so I think things are pretty broken and rotten. And we need to first recognize that. So I think my first question was what Dr. Uzair asked already, that if there are institutions, if there is everything there, then why nothing's happening, and why we're not moving anywhere. And I think we addressed some of it. So I think Dr. Naweed gave one example that all these machines that are bought, they don't work. Nobody's allowed to touch them, or nobody knows how to work them. People who are supposed to work them never sent for training because training is considered a foreign trip. So people who will never touch them are sent for the training so that they can get their foreign trip and have some fun and get something on their resume. Now their resume looks even better, so they get promoted to even more positions, but they actually never use the machine, although they got trained on it. And I know many personal examples of those. Including, my father was a geological chemist. So the machines that were bought, he was never sent on training, and then he was supposed to work on those machines. He's like, I was never trained. How am I going to use this machine? It was a $3 million machine bought and just, sat and nothing was done with that. And then Umar Saab recently, and I had the pleasure of following Dr. Umar Hayat on last trip to Pakistan to visit some of these facilities. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but maybe he can be a little more candid and share some of his experiences on how the state of the affairs was. And Dr. Naweed probably know that we are trying to develop a platform to do some of this, and it's so hard to find a good trained person. I'm not kidding. You put in an application, you say, okay, and all sorts of applicants come out. 40, 50 applicant, and not a single one you can even train to do something. And then we say there is a lot of good people out there. I don't know where those good people are hiding in Pakistan, who you could hire. You said that they went from 26 people to 600 people. You gave an example of this company from India. We cannot even go from 0 to 26 people in 5 years. I don't know how we cannot even find 3 good people. How are we going to find 20 good people or 30 good people in Pakistan? And I don't want to put names, but I have seen personally a lot of very well recognized people, but there's not much substance underneath when you start actually asking what exactly do you do. Even institutions that are so-called very prestigious institutions, when you go there, you don't find much there. So we'll have to probably start from the private sector and from ground up. So sorry for the dose of reality. But so my one question will be, Naweed Saab, if we are starting completely from scratch in private sector, how to go about it? Do you see any positive opportunities in private sector? How much funds you have to raise to start something like a chemistry lab or something? And imagine there's going to be no revenue for first 2 years. How much investments or fundings are we thinking about and looking for to get something started?
First of all, there is no such thing as no revenue for 2 years. It is certainly not going to take that long. And if like me and Umar Bhai and others we have here in the Bay Area in the US industry, we'll make sure that if someone takes that bold step of initiating this, we'll make sure that they have a revenue started as soon as possible. Perhaps we will reverse engineer, we will have the interested parties say yes first, and then we will have the first brick placed for setting up the lab. We'll try to do that, right? One comment I want to give before I forget about the institutions. They have a different clock. That clock ticks at a different pace in institutions. And that pace is, disappointingly so slow. If we have to work with the institutions, we first have to, take their clock back and give them ours. So that is one thing with it. In terms of investment, I did not crunch those numbers with the current market scenario, which has drastically changed over the past 2 years. But I would say that within 2 million or even less than that, it can be erected, which can be very, very productive operation to begin with. And after that, if you keep investing back into that, it will be self-propagating business.
So Danish, allow me, there is one question by Samia. Samia is in Karachi and they develop quite a few things for wound, extra. And she had a question here. Samia, do you want to ask the question or there you wrote a question there? Samia Taslim. we are developing some products. We are developing pharma biotechnology, enzymes from microbiome. Now I'm developing xanthan gum, something. But Samia, do you have a question? What do you want from how this panel can help you, especially Naweed? Yes, you go ahead.
Hello, thank you, sir. You arranged a very wonderful series for our researchers. We developed the one research group. We are working in private. Early, we developed recently this year. We developed the certain chemical from microbes. We isolate the one microorganism to the spoil crucifery family. And then isolate and then develops the microorganism, identify and produce the xanthan gum from these microbes. And many microbes, secondary metabolite isolate for this are used for the pharmaceutical and
Yeah, Samia, sorry to interrupt.
How can
what do you need from the group?
To the commercial market, because our lab produce lot of molecules, but we have never opportunities what can sell these molecules. Basically, we need the certain connection to sell out and commercialize these products.
Yeah, so I think Danish, if I remember last year sometime we had Samia talk to the group. Maybe at another point we can have her talk and then people can ask her question. But the emails are in the chat, Samia. If you want to write to any of us, like Danish or Naweed or Uzair or any of us, you have my emails. But anybody interested to negotiate, talk, help, collaborate with Samia and her group, please, Samia, write your email in the chat and they will contact you. I will go back to Dr. Suri. Any comments, any questions? I haven't asked you today.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. I was just wondering how much is already, is there any current foreign investment going on into R&D and pharmaceutical in Pakistan? Is there any ones? So do we have any idea about that?
I cannot say for certain, but my understanding is there's none. Because when we talk about pharmaceutical companies, pharmaceutical industry, we quickly jump to how to make that syrup and how to, mix it and get it to the market. That's where we go. And that is the end result of that. And we do that in a very, very, dependent manner. Everything in that bottle comes from elsewhere. But we are talking about the base where things start taking place. And once we develop that skill, we can deal with, that is a relatively easy equation to deal with. Medicinal chemistry skill is so complicated, is so sophisticated, the ability to design molecule, drug molecule, and synthesize. And also, remember, these molecules are novel molecules. If the molecules are already known, it does not have the intellectual property protection. These are novel molecules which have never been synthesized before. To design and synthesize, that's a skill. So we have, to my understanding, to answer your question directly once more, to my understanding, we have not dared entering that space.
And it's almost one of my questions, you went to pharmacy school in Punjab University, our neighborhood from government college. But let's say in your pharmacy department, there are people who can develop these molecules, or somewhere else in the country, let's say I come up with. So are there people or no?
Not as such. They would need to be trained.
Okay.
And that is generally the case with the students we are producing. I can give you an example from another industry. A couple of years ago, there were some people from the government here in Silicon Valley. We have Naweed Sherwani, you might have heard about him. He is in a chip design business.
Yeah.
And he was explaining that the chip designing is a very, very specialized skill, highly sophisticated. China needs to design. And that is something, because of the national security reasons, cannot be outsourced to any country. And Pakistan happens to be one of the very, very few countries which China can give it to, and we surveyed 4,000 students, he said, and not a single one was able to work on a project like this, but he said we can train it.
Yeah, that was my thought. Junaid, do you have any comment in reference to that? You talked to a lot of people.
Well,
from...
one of the things that I've seen,
Mhm.
unfortunately, that Tanis has already told about training issues, but unfortunately, there's an expectation when you train, you stay with the company with a lower pay for 2 years, right? That's how residency, fellowship, everything works in medicine. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, I feel like people leave, and we have trained them, but then they go for a higher paying job for some reason, and that's also a sucky part, that the level of patriotism doesn't count at that point in time, and the greenback takes precedence over the green flag. And sorry, go ahead, sir.
No, sorry.
So, I mean, one of the things that we need is basically a way to actually make sure that there are instruments in place, also from a government strategy, that when we train them, they should have at least 3 years work into that company, and that could be done. I mean, there are, of course, places here in the US, they're vesting and all that mechanisms, especially. So there should be protections from the government to make sure that our talent, when trained, stays at least for 3 to 5 years.
Right. Well, in an ideal world, that would be great if that can be achieved. But my take on that is different. Someone's ability to move, to quit job from your company to move to another one is empowerment. And that's a very beautiful thing to, to have in a workforce. That's why when I said that the direct competitor, one of the core element of this business is going to be, if I have the ability to start, I talk to you, I say, well, let me show you my books. This is how much I'm making profit. This is very lucrative business. Across the street, there is a facility. Why don't you set up right there? So my employees leave, they go to you, your leave, they come to me, and so on and so forth. That's how the ecosystem develops. And that's eventually what we have to do.
Well, you're sitting in Silicon Valley, right? I mean, even right now in Faisalabad, I mean, there's an ecosystem developed for surgical instruments, and you can see that it doesn't matter at that point in time. But when you're building an industry like a chip industry, or pharmaceutical active ingredient industry, or something like that, when you're sending people out for 2 years, 3 years, getting PhD, coming back, training, at that point in time, there needs to be some protection for my investment in that individual or as a company, to make sure that he either trains someone before he leaves or something like that. So that sort of, I think at a government, we need some policies and procedures to make sure that that protection exists. Or, I mean, some people don't return after that. So, and that's been measured. I mean, I've sponsored 2 students and they're gone, which is fine. I mean, I'm happy for them, but at the end of the day, the question is, if there's a budding industry, there needs to be some repercussions, and they are there. India and China actually put that, especially Russia also puts it, if you look at their contracts for student sponsorships.
Yeah, so I think this is a very interesting discussion. At least we know what are the issues and how we possibly can get involved, all of us, from Apna membership, or people in Pakistan or listening from pharma, like Samia is, she just wrote her email, please get in touch with her. Anybody interested in her products, she's doing this good work in Karachi on wound care and other things. I think if Danish, if there is no other burning comment, I'm gonna let people go at 1:06. It's supposed to be Father's Day weekend in America, at least. I
think I will let Dr. Uzair close, but I will make a quick comment that I think, like Dr. Naweed said, the opportunity is there. We are trying to create a platform where we can bring some of that R&D. It has to be outside of institutions. You can pay them to use their machines, but not more than that. It has to be outside of most of current ecosystem, and then there will be a lot of training involved. It will be hard to find and hire initial people, but it'll be a slow process, but I think it's doable. So I know Omar Saab and Naweed Saab can pull this off, and we're behind them and we'll support them in all ways possible. And I will invite Dr. Uzair to give remarks to close the session.
Thank you, Danish. Just a quick remark. I think the culture has changed in Pakistan. Now the vendor, they provide the total training for all of these instruments if needed be. So I am fully aware of this thing. It has changed now. You don't need really to send somebody abroad for training. These instruments, the local training is available. It is free and it is given from the vendor. So just to set the stage right, they may be different for some technology, but for the pharmaceutical, all of these instruments which you have shown, HPLC and NMR, everything. So the training is locally available, free, and I know the vendor. So that is for sure. So it's just we need to start it. And thank you very much to all the participants for your passionate participation, and to our speaker, Dr. Naweed Muhammad, for such a wonderful presentation, and the panelists as such for creating very nice comments and everything. So on behalf of Apna Merit, I say thank you to all of you and see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And hopefully, Naweed sir will see you in Silicon Valley soon.
Sure. Please let me know when you are here next time. Or
Okay.
anybody.
Okay. Khuda Hafiz. Khuda Hafiz.
That is.